Moje ime je Teja in to je tvoja božična doza vitamina P. Pogovorov o telesu, umu, življenju. In danes imam zate en prav zanimiv pogovor z Donom Bennettom. Pogovarjali se bomo o tem, kakšna hrana je najbolj primerna za človeka, o tem, s kakšnimi koraki do najboljšega zdravja. Na koncu imam pa zate še eno darilce. Tako da ne že kar zdaj skočiti na konec. Poglej si debato, potem pa pokukaj, kaj te čaka.
Okay, so before we start with the topic of this conversation, I would like to put things in a context a little bit, this talk. Why did I decide to invite Don on my podcast? We've met about 10 years ago when Don was one of the speakers at the Fruits and Health Festival here in Slovenia. And since then, we kept in touch, and I'm really happy that you, Don, decided to be a guest. Not decided, but said yes to my question if you'd be my guest here on my newly born podcast. So I know you are a treasury of very fascinating health information, but for other people listening to this podcast, what would you say if somebody would have asked you, who are you, Don Bennett?
Well, I would say that I'm an inquisitive person. I question a lot of things, which is good, especially in today's world. I'm whimsical, and I'm a disease avoidance specialist by trade. I'm both a truth seeker and a truth teller. And since I hate arguing, I just like to deal in facts. I figured when I was a teenager, if I just stuck to facts and had nothing to do with opinions, there would be no arguing. Well, I was wrong about that, but I still try to stick to facts today. And if you want to know exactly, I'll just show you a few slides that I've prepared that let you know a little bit more about me. Of course, I wouldn't have these slides with me if someone just asked me, but I'll take advantage of the fact that this is a podcast. I've been researching health issues for 50 years. I've been vegan for 49 years. I've been teaching about health for 28 years. And I've been raw vegan for about 23 years and counseling for 21 years. And I've been researching health issues for over half a century now. Yippee, I can say that, yay. But I've been researching and not studying, and there's a very big difference between the two. And in my research, I've been employing the ethos of science. And if you want to know what that is, you can go to my website, which is health101.org, and then /science will let you know what the ethos of science is. And just basically, it's open questioning, no authorities, no biases or personal preferences. And you want to have an honest desire for facts. You want to be transparent with everything that you're sharing with people. You want to have a reliance on evidence, and that's very important. You want to have a respect for rational and honest discussion and a desire to peer-to-peer. The ability to change your position when the evidence merits it. And this is what I'm famous for here, an intolerance of distortion and misrepresentation. Ooh, I hate that. And having a skeptical interrogation of accepted notions is very important as a good researcher. And the last one, which I think is most important out of all of them, is first, do no harm. And this is especially important when you're talking about health issues. So that's what's guided me in my research over all these decades.
Great, thanks for this introduction. Now we are ready to start with today's topic. And today we are going to talk about how we can improve our health for at least one level on the scale from 1 to 10, let's say. And how can we do that in a world that's not really supportive of us being healthy? And it's really quite sad how being unhealthy and making poor health choices is considered normal. And also it's interesting how it takes us a very, very long time to realize that something is not quite right with ourselves. And only then are we ready to make some changes. But what do you think? Why are we not all doing our best to reach level 10 on this imaginary health scale?
Well, it depends on the person. There's different categories of people, and each have their own reasons for not getting up to that 10 on a scale of 1 to 10. And by the way, 10 is as healthy as you can possibly be. It's impossible to be any healthier. That's what a 10 is. And also with a 10 comes the lowest odds of you ever getting a diagnosis of something life-threatening. So 10 is nice if you want to live a long, healthy life and just, die in your sleep in your late 90s of nothing specific, feeling really good up until that last day and never having to go to the hospital unless you're there to visit somebody else. Or if you're a doctor, I guess you'd be going to the hospital a lot. Yeah, that'd be another reason. But some people think a lot about their future finances, but they don't think a lot about their future health. So that's one category. They just don't think about it. They feel fine now. They'll tell you, well, I feel fine. There's no reason to change what I'm doing because I feel fine. But just because you feel fine doesn't mean there isn't a very small cancerous tumor growing inside you that just isn't bothering anything yet. And it won't for another 30 years. And in 30 years, you won't feel fine, but it's already started. So things like cancer and heart disease can take a long time before they get to the point where you notice that you have them. So you just don't want them starting in the first place. Or if they've already started and they're 15 years into a 30-year cycle, you want to stop them now and get them to start going back in the other direction. So you never get a diagnosis of anything. There's also some people who don't value their health until they lose it. They don't get serious about their health until they get a diagnosis of something serious. But it's a lot easier, like I said, to prevent ill health than to get it and try and get rid of it. So it's better just not to get it in the first place. There's also a group of people who really, they don't care about their health. They're fine being a 5 on a scale of 1 to 10 or a 4. They're like, eat, drink, and be merry. And they just don't think about their health at all. And okay, I can understand that. Well, actually, no, I can't. I can't resonate with that. I do like to eat and I do like to drink and I do like to be merry, but I want to be healthy while doing all those things. And some people honestly think that they're doing the best they can do. They're just not aware that they could be doing better. And so that's another category. So you just, those are all the different reasons why people right now are not at a level of 10.
Okay. So like the saying goes, ignorance is a bliss or something like that.
Yes, yes.
So in years of research, you have come to a conclusion that humans are designed to eat raw food, but not any kind of a raw food diet, right? So which raw food diet is the one for humans?
Yeah, people talk about the raw food diet. I'll say, what kind of diet are you eating? And they'll say, I'm eating the raw food diet, the raw food diet. And then when I ask them, well, which one? They look at me very confused. Everybody who I've said this to looks at me very confused because they all think that there's only one version of the raw food diet. So technically, you're eating a raw food diet, because there's about 7 of them. And we can go through what they are right here. 7 different, so this is why there's no such thing as the raw food diet. There's the raw food diet that includes harmful foods, okay? Not anything in the produce section, and we'll talk about this, I think, is okay to eat. So there are some harmful foods that some raw vegans are eating. So that's one raw vegan diet. Now, and none of them know this. And then when they find out, they make a decision to either get them out or not. It just depends how healthy they want to be. Everything I'm going to be talking about today, the decisions that people make, comes down to how healthy do you want to be on a scale of 1 to 10. I picked a 10. Once I realized there was that scale, I picked a 10 immediately. A long time ago, I said, okay, I'm picking a 10, just makes sense. What do I have to do to get to 10? Whatever it is, I'm going to do it. I made that promise to myself. All right, so that's one of the 7 different raw vegan diets, the ones that include harmful foods. There's another one that has either too much fat or too little fat. I've discovered this. Or a very unbalanced ratio of omega-6s to the omega-3s. So the fat issue is another one. You can have a raw vegan diet that either has too little, too much, or way too many omega-6s, and which crowd out the omega-3s. And it's important to get equal amounts of both. You need both. One's pro-inflammatory, it causes inflammation, that's the omega-6s, and one's anti-inflammatory. It does away with the inflammation once the body doesn't need inflammation anymore. And by the way, when you have inflammation, the body is causing it for a reason. It's not, it's not disease. It's the body doing that. If you have a fever of 104 degrees Fahrenheit, the body is causing that, and it's doing it for a reason. If you perspire, the body is doing it for a reason. But what do? Well, I don't want to perspire. I'm going to spray on an antiperspirant. Well, and the body is rolling its eyes saying, what are you doing? I need to perspire, or I need to have this fever. Why are you trying to bring this fever down? Or I need this inflammation right now. Don't take medications that bring down inflammation. I'm doing this on purpose. But when the body creates inflammation, when it doesn't need it anymore, it needs to get rid of it. And it does that with having enough omega-3s. So if we eat an unbalanced ratio of omega-6s to 3s, that can be a problem. So that's number 2 of the 7 different raw vegan diets. The third one is ones that have less than 100% raw food, like 60-40 raw cooked, but as a diet. This is fine for a transition to get to an all raw diet, but some people have been convinced that this is an actual diet in and of itself, where you just, you increase your amount of raw foods and you decrease the amount of cooked foods, but you can still have cooked foods. And there's people who promote this diet. For example, the raw till 4 diet is one example. And they give the impression that you can be equally as healthy on a diet of 60-40 as you can on a diet of 100% raw food. And that, from a science perspective, that makes absolutely no sense. There's no way you can be equally as healthy when you're still, once you understand what happens in the body when you eat cooked food, you'll say, okay, there's no way I'm going to be as healthy eating just some cooked food. And actually, it can be very difficult in the body. People who eat raw 6 days a week, all raw 6 days a week, but they give them 1 day to eat cooked food. That's actually even more hard on the body, because the body is like, oh, okay, I'm 4 days without any, 5 days without any, 6 days without any, yay, the rest of my life, I'm not going to have any more. And then boom, in comes some. And the body's like, oh, I was just starting to, now I have to go backwards. And it goes backwards every week, week after week, and it's just rolling its eyes. So that's why a transition is much better. So you go from a diet that's, some people 100% cooked food. Is that possible? Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen people go to McDonald's or Burger King or Wendy's, and they take the lettuce off the hamburger. They don't want lettuce. That's raw food. I don't want any raw food. I want cooked food. So you go from a diet that's mostly cooked food and then less and less cooked and more raw food, fruits, and you just do it slowly over time so the body can get used to it. In fact, if you've been eating cooked food for a long time, and you do this overnight and just go to 100% raw overnight, you can actually overburden the body because it'll start detoxifying right away because no more of this burdensome cooked food is coming in. But if you're old enough, your liver might be burdened to the extent where you may even have to go to the hospital. I've heard some cases of this. So you do want to transition. You don't want to do this overnight. So that's the raw vegan diet number 3, the ones that continuously are going to provide cooked food. So actually, it's not really a raw food diet, is it? But some think it is. The number 4 is the ones that pay absolutely no attention to food miscombinations. That's another raw vegan diet. They think as long as it's all raw and it's plant-based, it doesn't matter what you eat. You can eat anything you want. And that's not really true either, because there are some foods that, even though we're designed to eat each of these 2 foods that I'm talking about, food A and food B, you shouldn't be eating them together at the same meal because they require 2 different digestive environments. They have 2 different transit times. That's the amount of time it takes from the moment you put it in your mouth to the moment it makes it out of the stomach into the intestines. That's the transit time through the stomach. So if you eat 2 foods that have 2 different transit times and require 2 different digestive environments when they're in the stomach, well, you only have one stomach, so something's going to go wrong for one of those foods, and that's going to end up causing indigestion, even if you don't feel it. So some people say, well, I can eat this and this, and you say it's not good to eat them together, but I don't feel anything wrong. Well, it doesn't mean that they aren't digesting poorly inside your body, and that's not a good thing. So that's number 4 out of the 7. Number 5 raw vegan diet is the ones that have no worries about nutrition. And we've heard this, and I talk about it all the time. There's a lot of raw vegan educators out there who teach this, who say, as long as you eat an all raw diet of plant-based fruits and vegetables, you don't have to worry about your nutrition. You'll get enough of all the nutrition you need. Don't have to worry about it. In other words, you don't need ever to take any kind of nutritional supplements. Well, this has been proven to be wrong. And this is not my opinion. This is a fact. And this subject is squarely in the realm of objective fact. So anyone that tells you you just don't have to take supplements is telling you that because whether they realize it or not, they have a philosophical aversion to taking supplements, or they say we shouldn't need to take supplements. We didn't need to take them 100,000 years ago. Okay, I agree. We didn't. Good thing, because they weren't around. But where we get our food from today is not where we got our food from 100,000 years ago. It's like night and day difference. We were able to get nutritious food 100,000 years ago, and as long as you got enough to eat and you didn't get eaten, you were good. Everything was fine. Life was good. But today, our foods come, for most of us, come from an agri-industry that grows for lots of different reasons, like size and appearance and growth rate and shelf life and yield and sugar content, but they're not growing for nutritional content. They're growing mainly for profit. So they are not going to put back anything into their soils that they don't have to put back. They only put back what they need to be able to grow crop after crop after crop after crop. And that's just 2 nutrients out of the dozens that we need. They're not putting the rest back. So you're never going to have to worry about getting a potassium deficiency or a phosphorus deficiency because they put those back into the soil. But what about sodium? What about boron, cobalt? If you're not getting enough cobalt, your body can't make enough B12. So some people are going to need some nutritional supplements, worthwhile ones, not the garbage ones. 95% of all supplements sold in the store are worthless. They're just garbage. But 95% is not 100%. So there's a small number and you don't even need a lot of different ones. It's just a couple that most people need. And this is my specialty in testing people. And I do this with people all over the world. I have clients in Slovenia and they test and they say, oh, wow, I am low in D, B12 or iodine. And I've been eating all raw for years. I don't understand how. And then I explain how this can be. One of my presentations I give at fruit festivals, or any festival, is how it's possible to get less nutrition on a vegan diet or on a raw vegan diet compared to the typical Western diet. Because think about it, the typical Western diet, you're eating foods that are processed and they're fortified. In most countries, there's a food fortification program that the government puts in place. And those foods are fortified with the nutrients that people would otherwise not get enough of. And you got D, B12, and iodine is the big three. That's why I test everybody for the big three. So when you go to a vegan diet, which is foods that are not fortified with anything, even if they were grown in good soil, they're not going to have any D. D normally doesn't come from food. They're not going to have any B12. They may have some, but that's not where we're meant to get our B12 from. So some is not enough. And they're usually not going to have enough iodine. That's a tough one for even good farmers to get back into their soil. So that's why I test everybody on the big three. So that's the one, that's a raw vegan diet that, you think you're doing good. And in the beginning, you're doing great. You resolve a lot of health challenges you had, but then over 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 years, your health starts to go downhill and you're wondering why. Well, it's because you're following an educator who says you're never going to need any supplements, which is a lovely notion. I mean, it'd be great because they cost money and no one wants to spend money unnecessarily. But that's not the reality. So if you want to be as healthy as you can be throughout your whole entire life, yes, there are people who are going to need to take a few nutritional supplements, the good ones. The next one, the next raw vegan diet is you learn from someone who teaches you about the diet, even the best one. And even he or she is saying, yes, you're going to need a few supplements, but there's no attention being given to the other basics of health, none at all. And diet is just one part of it. And we'll talk more about that, and I have a few slides on that. But if someone who's teaching about diet doesn't at least mention the importance of exercise and getting enough sleep and deep sleep, being well hydrated, and they're doing a disservice, because some people just learn about the diet and they go forward, they don't think anything about what they're doing, and it's physiologically impossible to be as healthy as you can be if you're not paying equal attention to all those other basics of health. And I do have a slide on that. Now, the last of the 7 different raw vegan diets is the one that I teach and the one that my Facebook group focuses on. It's the healthiest of the raw vegan diets, because if you look at this list, obviously some of these are going to be healthier than other ones on this list. And some of these on this list is going to be less healthy than other ones. So if you have that kind of differences, well, there's going to be one that's the unhealthiest and one that's the healthiest. I mean, logic just demands this, right? So I wanted to figure out which is the healthiest. I did, and that's basically what I teach.
Okay, so now we've talked about diet and we still are going to talk about it, but I think we have to make something clear. We're not talking about losing weight, right? I mean, I think we have to just clarify this for some viewers. Diet does not equal losing weight. So we are talking about nutrients, not calories per se, but nutrients. So you've touched on this a little bit already, but what is the difference between diet and nutrition?
Yeah, it's so important, because when you look at the basics of health and people know what they are: sleep, exercise, diet, they say diet. But for me, diet itself gets broken down into 2 categories. It's the foods that we eat and the nutrition that those foods are supposed to provide. So diet is the foods, and hopefully we're getting the ones we're designed to eat. Nutrition is what the foods should be providing. And again, 50,000 years ago, we didn't have to be concerned about the foods that we ate being able to provide it. Enough of all. People hear me say this all the time. Enough of all. I use that term over and over and over again. So to get enough of all the nutrients that we required was pretty easy. It was impossible not to 50,000 years ago. But today is different because of how our foods are being grown. Like I said, for profit, not for nutritional content. So that's basically the difference between diet and nutrition. Diet is the foods, and then there's the nutritional aspect. So if someone's just teaching you about the correct foods to eat and how it's not good to eat cooked food and it should be all raw and blah, 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 but they're not focusing on how to get it, make sure you get enough nutrition, again, they're doing a disservice. And as far as weight's concerned, yeah, this is not a weight loss diet per se, but it will help you if you're overweight and let's say because you're eating too much fat, you have a very slow metabolism because you're not getting enough iodine. There's a number of reasons. You're not getting enough deep sleep. Not getting enough deep sleep can cause you to weigh more than you should, by the way. And a lot of people don't know this. So that's why I'm saying it's good to pay attention to all the basics of health. So if you're adopting the healthiest of diets and lifestyles, yeah, you will get down to your normal natural weight, but without trying to. It'll just happen.
Let's explore nutrients a little bit more. Can all of them be obtained from food?
Well, it depends. If you have a time machine and you can go back 50,000 years and eat from the wild back then, the answer is yes. But today, not likely for most people, just again, because of the way the foods are grown. The growers are not putting certain nutrients back into the soil. So if they're not in the soil, they're not going to be in the plant. And this is, again, not an opinion. This is fact. There's been, obviously, if you think about it, hey, I wonder if anyone has done research where they took the plants and they check them. They check them for their nutritional content. And have they been doing this, how long have they been doing this for? So they can compare. So not likely. And by the way, the buyers that work for the stores, the markets where you buy your food from, they're not choosing what to buy based on what we're designed to eat. They're choosing what they buy for the store based on what sells. Okay, so that's important to know. So there's going to be things in the produce section that really is not our foods, and some things that actually can do harm. But don't get depressed over this just because you're buying some foods that may not have enough cobalt or enough chromium or maybe not even enough sodium, which is a really important one. There are still ways to get enough of all. They're just not, it's going to come from a really good high quality nutritional supplement like a green powder. So there's a way to compensate for how our foods are being grown. Now, if you're growing all your own foods, foods we're designed to eat, but you're growing them in your own soil, that's great, but you're only going to be doing this year round if you're living a little closer to the equator than Slovenia. Slovenia is too far away from the equator to be able to do this all year round. So folks in your region are forced to buy from growers. And if they want to be as healthy as they can be, the people have to realize that a few certain nutritional supplements are a good idea to include in their diet.
Okay, so now we have a very basic idea of what we should be eating. And we have probably realized that the majority of food in our stores shouldn't even be labeled as such. But then what are we left with? The produce section, but you already mentioned that not everything there is okay either. So let's explore that a little bit more.
Right. So you go to the produce section, which is where I would get all my food from. But here the key is knowing what we're biologically adapted to eat and what we're not. And if some of the foods that we're biologically adapted to eat, like the creamy tropical fruits, and I think you've had some things like durian and mamey, well, they're not going to grow in Slovenia's region. They're tropical. So if you can't find them locally, you've got to try and eat in such a way where what you would get from those tropical foods, you can still get. But now you might have to make some things. You might have to take some seeds and throw them into a blender in order to add a little bit more fat to a banana smoothie. But fortunately, there are still ways to get around just about everything. So it's not a worry. You just need the knowledge. And then even if you buy like, you know, bananas or mangoes or papaya from your produce section in your market, again, like I said before, how are they grown? They're not likely going to be providing, you know, enough of all of the nutrients that the body requires for optimal operation. But again, there's workarounds, so you can get around that. Yeah, so it's just, again, all this is just knowledge. When you've heard the term knowledge is power, that's what we're talking about here.
But I also heard you speak about tomatoes, for example. You're not a huge fan of them, right?
Yeah, that's putting it mildly. I don't like to usually mention the, you know, people say, well, okay, well, what are the foods in the produce section that we should not be eating? But then when I say that, people start throwing tomatoes at me because they don't like what I'm hearing. So I'll preface this by saying, don't shoot the messenger. That's an old expression. Yes, there are some things, we're not designed to eat nightshade foods. So anything in the nightshade family is not something we should be eating. They cause problems for everybody over time. Some people can't eat them at all. If they eat them, they instantly have a bad reaction to them. So they know they can't eat them and they don't. Okay, that's fine. So other people will say, well, I can eat them because I'm eating them and they're not doing the same thing to me as they are to George or to Sally. But that's not the case. They're just going to be harmed by it very slowly over time. So in the nightshade family, what raw vegans would normally eat from the nightshade family are things like tomatoes, red bell peppers. That's pretty much it. There's other nightshade foods, but you kind of have to cook them. So once I realized that the arthritis that I was getting a bunch of years back, I'm like, how am I getting arthritis? The way I eat, and come on. So I looked at my diet and I said, what am I doing or not doing? It's probably what I'm doing that's causing arthritis. And I said, oh, it can't be this, can't be that. Oh, wait a minute. I'm eating nightshade food. I'm eating tomatoes and red bell peppers. But I knew better. It's so weird how human brains work sometimes. When people come to me with arthritis or with any kind of, you know, condition, especially, so arthritis, what will I recommend to people with arthritis? I tell them not to eat nightshade foods. So now I'm getting arthritis and I'm like, oh, wonder why. Well, so as soon as I got the tomatoes and the red bell peppers out of my diet, it took about 8 months for the arthritis to go away, but it went away. Okay, so duh. So yeah, those are something we shouldn't be consuming, anything in the nightshade family. Now there's also these things called cruciferous vegetables, like broccoli, cauliflower, kale. They're all in the cruciferous, they're crucifers, they're in the cruciferous family. And we hear a lot of information about the wonderful benefits of cruciferous vegetables. And those benefits, they're not lying to you, those benefits are true. But there are foods that can have both benefits and detriments, beneficial properties and bad properties. So they can be good for you and bad for you at the same time, just in two different ways, dealing with two different parts of the body. So my philosophy is don't eat those, and instead eat foods that have the same good benefits, but none of the bad detriments. Now that's a very good logical philosophy, right? Are there, like, in other words, do cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and cauliflower and kale and Brussels sprouts, do they provide any special kind of benefit that you cannot get from other foods? No. You can get the benefits that they provide from other foods that don't have their negative effects. And what's one big negative effect? They interfere with your body being able to utilize iodine. Iodine is a nutrient just like calcium and magnesium and cobalt and sodium, and it's on that list. We don't need a lot of it. We need way more sodium than we do iodine. And you can go for many, 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 many years without any iodine at all, even though the body requires it. But your health will be going downhill that whole time. Sodium, you can't do without sodium. You can't do without any sodium at all for more than a couple of months. You'll die. So, but iodine, you can go for years, maybe even decades without any coming in. And what the cruciferous vegetables do is they interfere with the body utilizing any iodine that is coming in. So if you're eating some fresh seaweeds, wet, fresh seaweeds, they'll provide some iodine. But if you're also eating cruciferous vegetables, you could not be, it could be handicapping your ability to utilize that iodine. So better to be safe than sorry. It's another one of my famous expressions. And just stay away from the things that have anything negative about them. So that's basically it. It's nightshade foods and cruciferous vegetables. Anything else you can eat in the produce section that you don't have to cook?
There's not much left.
No, yeah, there's not much left. What can I eat? Just hundreds of different kinds of fruits.
So I know that at this point, people are getting very curious. So would you mind sharing with us what is it that you typically eat in a day?
Yeah, I can do that. Just people have to understand that I got to this point over a long period of time. There was a transition from me eating what everyone else was eating to where I am today. My body is very in tune with foods. So I eat mono meals, which is a meal of just one thing, which is how every other animal in the world eats, by the way. So any animal that eats multiple things in their diet, they only eat one at a time at a meal. And there's very good reasons for that. It makes digestion very easy. And the easier your digestion, the healthier you will be in general. So I just eat one food for a meal. I don't give my meals names. This is very important. Don't name your meals. Don't call them names like breakfast or lunch or dinner or supper or snack. No names. Because you should be eating, and this is how I eat. I eat when I'm hungry, and I don't eat when I'm not hungry. So when I worked at a day job where everybody had to take lunch at 12 o'clock, if I wasn't hungry, I didn't eat. And if I got hungry at 1 o'clock, when everyone went back to work, so I worked through lunch. I worked from 12 to 1 when no one else was. And they're like, "What, Don, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm not eating, I'm not hungry." But at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, if I got hungry, that's when I would take my lunch break to eat. My boss didn't like that. And I explained to him, I'm doing it for medical reasons. I meant for health reasons, but I just figured I'd say medical reasons. He'd go, "You bring me a note from your doctor that says this is how you have to eat, and it'll be okay. Otherwise, you're fired." So I said, "Okay." I got a doctor's note. And I gave it to him, and he checked to make sure it was a real doctor, and it was. And he says, "Okay, you're the only one in the entire company out of many thousands of employees that can eat whenever he wants." I just don't understand what this world is coming to. It was pretty hilarious. But so that's what I do. I eat when I'm hungry, and I don't eat when I'm not hungry, just like every other animal. Now, it does mean you have to have food with you, so that when you get hungry, you can eat. So sometimes I'll go out and I'll bring some, bananas with me or some grapes or apples or something. But I didn't get hungry while I was out. So when I get back home, I put them away again. It's a strange way to live to other people who don't understand what's going on, but that's basically how I eat. Most of what I eat is fruit. Ripe fruit, that's very important to say, because some people don't really know what ripe fruit is. Certainly the chefs in restaurants have no idea what ripe fruit is. So you can order a fruit plate at a restaurant and it's not likely to be ripe fruit. So I eat fruit when it's ripe, and if it's not, I'll eat, if I'm in the mood for a banana, let's say my body is calling out for a banana. And as, by the way, eating mono meals is how your body can get used to what's specifically in each food. So it knows that a banana is a really good source of potassium. So if I start getting low in potassium, or rather if my body starts getting low in potassium, it can say, "Banana." And I'm like, okay, I'm hungry and I think I want a banana. That's because my body is telling me that's what it wants. Now, if I don't have any ripe bananas, then I'm like, oh boy, I'm not going to eat an unripe banana. So then I'll have to eat something else. But eating mono meals just is a way so your brain's database can be programmed so that if it needs more of one thing or another, it can move you to those foods, because that's why we eat a variety of food. Some foods are higher in calcium, some foods are lower. The foods that are lower in calcium are higher in magnesium. So this is how your body can fine tune what it gets. So it's always eat when I'm hungry, not eat when I'm not hungry, mono meals, mostly fruit. Sometimes I'll have some lettuce. And if I'm getting the desire for lettuce, which is rare, but if I'm getting a desire for lettuce, it's because I'm probably not getting enough fiber. And my body wants a little bit more fiber because I'm eating a lot of sweet fruit. So it wants a little bit more fiber to help control the uptake of the sugars into my bloodstream. We didn't need to know this 50,000 years ago. You see a gorilla eating banana after banana after banana, and then the gorilla pulls down a leaf and eats the leaf. He doesn't know why he's eating the leaf. He just knows that his body wants him to eat some leaf now. And that's to get more fiber because of all the sugar that's coming in from the banana. But today we know why we do this. So I used to have to eat, by the way, a lot more greens because I didn't know anything about the need for nutritional supplementation. Now that I add a good, worthwhile green powder to my diet, to a smoothie or to a mush, or it's called a mash, where you just take up some ripe bananas and cut them up into a bowl and mash them up with a fork and then add in the green powder and mix it up and you eat that. Now that I'm getting goodly amounts of nutrition and calcium, from the green powder, my desire for greens has come way down over the decades. And that's what happens to everybody. Initially, their desires for lots of salad, greens, they have that desire. But then when they start adding a good nutritional complement to the diet, a good green powder, because there are terrible green powders out there also, worthless green powders. So you add a very worthwhile green powder to the diet, their desire for greens goes down to pretty much nothing. And they're amazed. And I explain why this was. You were just simply not getting enough minerals from the greens you were eating because of the way they were grown. Now, if you're growing your own greens, and some people do grow their own greens, because it's a lot easier to grow greens than it is fruit, then you can get a goodly amount of nutrition, minerals from the greens that you're growing at home, because you're taking care of your soil. You're making sure it's proper soil. So that's basically how I eat. Now, by the way, the benefit of eating when you're hungry and not eating when you're not hungry, if your body doesn't want you to eat for a few days, maybe even a week, how would it let you know? It would just simply not make you hungry. It would just continue to not make you hungry until it wants you to eat again. But if you're always eating breakfast, lunch, dinner, breakfast, lunch, dinner, breakfast, lunch, dinner, in other words, you're always eating ahead of what true hunger is, your body can't let you know not to eat. So there's a lot of people who've been doing this, breakfast, lunch, dinner, yet their body would like them to fast for maybe 5 days because it just has to catch up on some healing. And healing takes a lot of nervous system energy, but so does digestion. So by shutting off digestion for a week, that frees up a lot of energy to be put towards healing. And now you can do some very powerful healing. That's the power of fasting. But fasting is a whole nother discussion that I don't think we're going to have time for today. But you should fast when your body wants you to fast and not fast when someone tells you to fast. Your body should be telling you to fast or not. And it does that by simply not making you hungry. So if you find yourself eating according to hunger and you're hungry and you eat, and you're hungry and you eat, and then you don't get hungry for a few days, don't be worried. That's a good thing. Your body just wanted you to stop eating because it needed some extra nervous system energy to throw it some healing. Maybe you got exposed to a virus or something. That's basically the way I eat.
Let's say that your body is screaming for bananas. How many bananas are one meal for you? Just to put things a little in perspective for viewers.
Yeah, sure. Amount. I remember when I was a little kid and I was home and my parents would bring out a plate of food and put it in front of me. I was supposed to eat all that. And I remember thinking, how do they know how much I want to eat? Because you had to eat it all. And what if I ate it all and I wanted more? Well, sometimes there was more, but sometimes there wasn't. But there were a lot of times I didn't want to eat it all. Oh no, I had to eat it all. So how do you know when you're eating bananas, let's say, you're hungry and your body says bananas, and you go to eat bananas, how do you know when to stop? Initially, the banana will taste really, really good. I mean, it will be scrumptious, delicious. Oh, I used to know that word in Slovene. I don't remember delicious now, but I remember memorizing delicious. Anyway, so you'll eat bananas and you're eating them and you're eating them and you're eating them. But then all of a sudden, they're not going to taste as good anymore. It's nothing to do with the bananas. It's just your body's way of telling you that's enough. It just changes the taste so they're not scrumptious and delicious anymore, figuring that you'll stop. And you would. Even if you're, watch gorillas. Gorillas, when they're eating bananas, they'll never eat in whole numbers. They'll never eat 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8. They'll always eat 4.5, 5 1/4, 6 3/4. They'll always stop in the middle of a banana. And you're wondering, why are they doing that? That's because they're obeying their body's stop mechanism. They just don't want anymore. It's not because they're full. You know, a lot of people eat until they're ready to explode. That's not how we're designed to eat. So your body will have you eating to get enough, and it's usually eating to get enough calories, you know, fuel. Because if you're eating nutritious food, the nutrients are going to be automatic. You're going to get enough. Unfortunately, we don't have those kind of foods today. So sometimes people are eating not for calories. If you ever see someone who's overweight, obese, and they're hungry, I mean, not for emotional reasons, but they're actually hungry for physiological reasons. They're obviously not eating for calories because they got plenty of calories stored on their body. They're eating for, you know, the calorie department in the brain is saying, okay, don't need to eat, I got plenty. But the nutrition part of the brain is saying, nope, still don't have enough cobalt, still don't have enough magnesium, keep eating. So they keep eating because they're just not getting enough nutrition because they're eating a lot of cooked food is one of the reasons why, right? But when you're eating raw foods, that's a little easier. So I just eat until my body says stop. And sometimes it's in the middle of a banana, half a banana. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to respect that. And I just close up the banana and I'll throw it in the fridge, in the refrigerator. I won't continue to eat after my body gives me that very quiet, subtle stop. And you got to be able to hear it. So when you're eating a meal, don't be watching TV, don't be having a conversation with your best friend, because it's very easy just to keep eating because you don't hear the stop. And before you know it, you've eaten 10 bananas and you're like, oh, what did I do? Listen, Joe, we have to stop talking. I need to concentrate on what's going on here. So yeah, that's how to deal with quantity.
Okay, yeah, that's helpful, I think, for the viewers to get this feeling, because I think we've lost this ability to hear our bodies.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, so we just eat until we can't eat anymore. That's sad. So back to fruit. Fruit has a bad reputation because of the sugar content. So what are your thoughts on that, and how do you take care of your teeth?
Well, yeah, I hear that. People say, oh, fruit, it's got a lot of sugar in it, and sugar is bad, isn't it? That's what I hear. Well, there isn't one kind of sugar, just like there isn't one kind of raw vegan diet. There isn't only one kind of sugar. There's all kind of different kinds of sugar, and some are bad for you, and some are great for you. What's the fuel that you should be putting in your car? It should be gasoline if you have a gasoline car. It should be diesel fuel if you have a diesel car fuel. If you put different fuels in than what the car is designed to have, it's going to work out very, very bad for that car and for you. So we give off heat, right? We're 98 degrees and we're giving off heat. So what is our bodies burning? It's burning sugars. That's what it's burning. It's burning carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are sugars. So it just makes sense that that's what we're designed to eat for fuel. Now, if you don't have any fruit, let's say you fall down a well, or you lock yourself in a room and you're banging on the door and your cell phone battery is dead and you can't get out and there's no food. So there's no food for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, 6 days, and you're in there. And there's water, so you have a little sink in there so you can get some water, so that's good. But you have no food. Well, after a few days, your body runs out of the stored sugars. Now what's it going to use for fuel? It uses fat. So your body has a mechanism to be able to use fat. So better example, your body wants you to fast. It needs you to free up some nervous system energy for healing. So it's not going to want you to eat for a week, but you don't have a week's worth of sugars stored. You only have like a day or two. So how does the body continue to live? It can live on your fat. That's why you lose weight when you're fasting. Your body, after a few days, starts using fat for fuel. So we have that mechanism to be able to use fat for fuel instead of sugar, which is the preferred fuel for the body, but it's just not as clean burning. We can say it that way. So it's the second best fuel for the body is fat. And your body will keep using fat as long as it needs to until the fast is over or until someone unlocks the door and lets you out of the room. Now, what if your body uses all the fat it can possibly use and it dares not touch anymore? Like your brain is mostly fat. So your body is not going to touch your brain. It's going to touch your body fat first. But what happens when it's all done with all the body fat it can take and it doesn't want to touch the brain? So now what does it do? What does it use for fuel? Your body can use protein for fuel, but that's very dirty. It's very dirty. It's very difficult. It's very hard on the body, and the body normally will never get to that point. That's called starvation, when your body actually starts using muscle, which is mostly protein, for fuel. So it has these other abilities to use other things besides sugar for fuel, but sugar is what you want to use. That's what we're designed to have. But healthy sugars that come from fruit, with fruit, because there are companies that take the sugar out of fruit and they concentrate it and it becomes high fructose corn syrup. Oh, that's horrible to have. So yeah, it came from fruit. The fructose came from fruit, but it's in the way that you're now going to use it, it's horrible for the body. But when it's part of fruit, the glucose and the fructose that's in fruit, that's what the body is designed to have. Now, what happens when you start eating a diet where you're passing a lot of sweet, sugar past your teeth? Now you could have some problems. There are people that have strong dental genetics and people who have weak dental genetics. I know a lot of people like from the Netherlands, strong dental genetics. They have bulletproof teeth. They never got cavities. They never get cavities. It doesn't even matter what they eat. They're never going to get cavities because they have such strong teeth. Other people have weak dental genetics like me. So, I was very prone to getting cavities. So genetics plays a part. So for those who have weak dental genetics, well, if they have strong dental genetics, obviously they don't have to worry about a fruit-based diet. But if you have weak dental genetics, there are some things that you should be doing to compensate for the fact that you're now going to eat the diet that you're designed to eat. You're not designed to have weak dental genetics, but you can't do anything about that. You're born with that. So things you can do are just rinsing your mouth out with regular water after you eat a meal of citrus. So if you eat oranges, after you're done, just rinse your mouth out. Don't brush. That's the worst thing you can do at that point because the citric acid in the oranges has softened the enamel in your teeth. So if you brush immediately after eating oranges, that's not good. You'll score your teeth because the enamel has been softened. But if you just rinse your mouth with regular water, the minerals in that water will re-harden the enamel. So that's one thing. Another thing to do is before you go to sleep at night, you do a certain kind of mouth rinse. You can make it yourself at home and you just get a mouthful of it and you keep it in your mouth for 10 minutes and it'll help to strengthen the enamel. That's another thing you can do to help with your teeth. Another thing, if you're a mouth breather when you're sleeping, so you're sleeping with your mouth open and you're breathing through your mouth, if you wake up with a dry mouth, that's what you're doing. You're just breathing through your mouth instead of your nose while you're sleeping. What that does is it dries out the mouth and it dries out the saliva, but the saliva is what remineralizes the teeth. It's what keeps teeth strong 24 hours a day. But if for 8 hours a day, you've dried out your mouth while you're sleeping, that's not good. The saliva, assuming you're eating a good diet, that saliva is not mineralized. The mineralized saliva can't get to your teeth because you're drying out your mouth. So what some people do is they take a little piece of, there's a special kind of tape, which you can tape to the skin. It won't hurt the skin, won't harm the skin, but they tape their mouth closed when they go to sleep and they breathe, which forces them to breathe through their nose. Now, if they can't breathe through their nose, don't do that. That would be very bad. But as long as you can breathe through your nose, yeah, tape your mouth closed, and then the saliva will be able to help remineralize your teeth. So I have a whole big article on teeth on my website. If anybody, I can give you the link after we're done. I'll email you the link, and you can just place it in the show notes below if this is going to go onto YouTube. So there's a link to my dental article, and yeah, it's filled with some great information, and it's information you need to know just in case you're one of those people who have weak dental genetics.
So you don't brush your teeth at all?
No, I do, but I don't brush it the way most people brush it. Of course, right? I'm Don Bennett. I'm not going to brush my teeth the way everybody else brushes their teeth. Right now, but I thought about brushing. I said, well, we didn't brush our teeth 100,000 years ago, and they found that teeth were okay as long as you got a healthy diet. So why are we brushing our teeth today? Well, because a lot of people eat animal products and they get tartar building up, and to prevent that, they got to brush their teeth. You can use a toothbrush, but not as a brush. You don't really need to brush or polish your teeth with it, by putting something on the brush, then going in there and polishing it. When you're eating a fruit-based healthy diet, no animal products, you don't need to brush your teeth for that reason. You're not going to get tartar building up. But I use a toothbrush as a tooth tool, and you put it at 45-degree angles to where the tooth enters the gum, right there at that spot, and you can use it as a tool. You don't have to put anything on it. In fact, you shouldn't put anything on it, and I'll explain why in a second. And you just use it as a tool just to pull out any food that's trapped just below the gum line. That's a good thing to do, especially if you have weak dental genetics. So I do that, but you don't need to put anything on the toothbrush. So you're just using, and you don't need to brush. You're just using it as a tooth tool. Now, there's no harm in brushing as long as you don't do it right after you eat oranges, like I said. And there are some really good toothpastes out there that you could use. There's tons of horrible toothpastes, but there's a few good ones that you can use. But so you just use this the reason why you don't put anything on it, if the toothbrush is dry and you start doing this, what happens is it starts soaking up the saliva and pulling into the bristles of the toothbrush, whatever it is you're dislodging from under the gums. So it pulls it in to the bristles, and then you just clean out the brush and you continue. But if you've filled up the bristles of the brush with something, it can't do that. There's no more capillary action. There's no more pulling into the brush the stuff you're trying to dislodge from the teeth. So that's a reason to do what's called dry brushing. Most people think of dry brushing as brushing your hair, but you can do dry brushing for your teeth. I explain this in the dental article that I have on my website.
Okay, yeah, I'll put the links below. We need some light. Okay. So we can see that diet and nutrition play a major role in our health. But being as healthy as we can possibly be isn't just about food. So what are some other factors that influence our health and well-being?
I'm glad you asked, because that is, again, like I said earlier, it's super important. If you're only focusing on diet and not on any of these other equally important basics of health, it's just impossible to be as healthy as you can be. So I'll share my screen here and show you some of them. There's one, you got to get strong enough sunshine. Now, where you live, that's not going to be strong enough throughout the entire year. And by the way, sunshine, people say, when I ask them, what does sunshine give to the body? What does it make? And people say, vitamin D. And they're correct. And then I ask them, anything else? And they're like, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, there's about a half a dozen different nutrients that strong enough sunshine will make in your skin that the body requires. And these don't come from food, and these don't come from supplements. So it's really, really important to get strong enough sunshine all year round. Now, I hear what your viewers are saying, but I live in Slovenia and we don't have strong enough sunshine all year round. what do I do? There's a thing called a phototherapy device. It's a little box. It has light bulbs in it, but they're special light bulbs. They're special kind of light bulbs, and they will mimic the rays of the sun that make the nutrients. Not all the rays of the sun, because the sun has UVA and UVB. UVA is it damages the skin if you get too much. It's what burns you. If you go out to the beach or somewhere where you get too much sun, you get a sunburn. That's the UVA rays. The UVB portion of the spectrum is what makes the nutrients. So a really good phototherapy device, and again, there's some really bad ones out there, but a really good one will just make the UVB rays, and you use it for 10 minutes a day during the time of the year when your body, when the sun isn't strong enough to make the nutrients in your skin. And by doing it every day, you'll have enough D and D-sulfate, cholesterol sulfate, nitric oxide, all those other nutrients that are really very important for optimal health. So this one right here, this is a very, very, very important one to get enough. So by the way, if you go to a medical doctor and you give them some complaints and he thinks, let me test your vitamin D level. And he goes, oh yes, you're very, very low. And this would explain the symptoms you're having. What do they tell you to do? Take a vitamin D supplement. They may even write a prescription for one, because there are prescription vitamin D supplements. But if you were to ask the doctor, does this prescription, does this supplement have all the other nutrients that sunshine makes in your skin? I guarantee you they're going to go, I don't know what you're talking about. Please leave. Because they're not taught this, because it's really important for your health to have all of the other nutrients as well. So strong enough sunshine or its equivalent is one. Another one is enough sleep, not just sleep, but you got to get enough deep sleep. There's 4 phases of sleep. Number 1 is the lightest phase, and number 4 is the deepest phase. And the deepest phase of sleep is when your cell phone is getting a really good recharging. And same for you. In the deepest phase of sleep, phase 4 sleep, you're getting the most recharging of your nervous system energy. And that's why we sleep, by the way. We sleep to recharge our batteries, just like you're plugging your cell phone in. They've done studies, what happens if you prevent people from going to sleep, and they turn into they can't think. They can't put a square peg in a square hole anymore. They can't do simplest of math. What's 2 + 3? They can't do it if they've been deprived of enough sleep. So sleep is very, very important for healing. It's also very important for having the proper weight. So if you're a little overweight, it could be because you're not getting enough phase 4 sleep. And I have an article on sleep, I'll give you that one too, which explains what can interfere with getting enough of the phase 4 sleep. So another one is exercise. But you know what? My observation has been that people either get way too much or way too little. They're doing way too much or way too little. I don't see too many people in that sweet spot in the middle, doing just the right amount and the right things to do. I see people doing just about everything except what we're designed to do. So what are we designed to do? Think back. What did we do a very, very long time ago? We did a lot of walking. Occasionally we would run away from danger. So maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks, we would sprint, running as fast as we possibly could for a very short period of time. So sprinting, and then we climbed. Our cousins in the primate kingdom, they climb. We still climbed. I mean, I've climbed to get some really good mame sapote off a tree, which I wouldn't have been able to get unless I climbed the tree. So keeping those 3 mechanisms, in good shape, walking, climbing, and sprinting, that would logically be a very smart thing to do. But I see people, they don't do any walking, they don't do any climbing, they don't do any sprinting. They are running many, many miles. Sprinting, yes, for 10 seconds. So people say, do you run, Don? And I'm like, yeah, 10 minutes a year. 10 minutes a year, that's how much I run, which is 10 seconds once a week. That's what it breaks down to. So you keep your sprinting mechanism in good shape, you'll still be able to sprint when you're 90. You won't be able to sprint as fast or for as long or for as far, but you'll still be able to sprint. How many 90-year-olds do you know that can do any kind of sprinting? Some 90-year-olds can't even walk very well. So do a lot of walking, because that's what we're designed to do the most of. Do sprinting on soft surface, not on blacktop or concrete. And then if you can't join a climbing gym, because there are gyms that are called climbing gyms, and you literally climb. It's the greatest exercise in the world. It works out the entire body, and it's what we're designed to do. So if you can't join a climbing gym, or you don't have one to join, try and join a regular gym and use the machines that would have you using the same muscle groups. I see people in the gym. I go to the gym once a week, but just once a week, do an intense workout as if I'm climbing, but they don't have a climbing machine, so I have to use a number of different machines to get the same effect. But I see other people using these wacky machines, and I'm like, I feel like asking them, 100,000 years ago, would you have done anything that resembles what you're doing there on that machine? The answer would be no. So I'd say, so why are you doing it? Well, they'd say, it's here, it's part of the group of machines that you're supposed to be using, and my trainer said to use it. Most trainers don't know anything about healthy, physical activity. So physical activity, that's another one. Don't do too much, don't do too little. What about toxin avoidance? Very, very important. Now, that gets easier when we change our diet for sure, but I still see some people, they'll be running, which is bad, but they'll be running in traffic. They'll be running right alongside a road where there's lots of cars on it with lots of fumes coming out of the car's tailpipes. That's why I'm a big advocate of electric cars. Electric cars have no tailpipes. Imagine a world where all the cars had no tailpipes. Okay, so now you can walk around, you can jog, run, sprint next to all those cars, no problem. But anyway, some people are still, exposed to toxins. Maybe the toxins are in the water they're drinking at home. These are raw vegans, but they weren't taught, don't drink your tap water. You have to filter your tap water for certain things. So there can be toxins. There can be toxins in the air. Now, if you live right next to a factory where there's just tons of toxins in the air, the only answer to that really is moving somewhere else. But we still have to keep an eye out for toxins. And by the way, holding a cell phone to your head when you're talking, that's a toxin. It's a radiation, and you don't want to be doing that either. It's a form of toxicity to the body. Another thing is relaxation. How many of you out there watching this right now, by a show of hands, make time for relaxing every day? Oh man, I'm not seeing a lot of hands going up. Not good. Need to carve out some time in your schedule of the day just to sit and decompress 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes every day. You can find 10 minutes to do something that's super important. And that is super important right there, relaxing. Being able to laugh. If someone tells you a funny joke and you don't laugh, that's not good. That you have to sit down and reassess your whole entire life now to find out why it is that you're not laughing at things that are funny, why you can't make yourself laugh. I make myself laugh all the time. I'm constantly saying silly things. You've probably heard it in this video already. So laughter is very good. It's a good sign that your life is going okay enough where at least you can laugh. So laughter is important. Managing stress. Oh, this is a huge one. I know people who are eating the perfect diet. The perfect diet, they're getting they're join a climbing gym, but they're not managing their stresses they have today. Because we can have stresses today that we never would have had 50,000 years ago. Right? You got to be someplace by a certain time. You got to be able to pay that mortgage or that rent. And you can't not pay the electric bill. They'll turn off the electricity, for crying out loud. So there's all kinds of stresses going on, interpersonal relationships. So these need to be managed. They're all manageable. You just need to know how. You need to know the tricks and the techniques to deal with them. Because you can make the build problem go away by winning the lottery, but you can't force yourself to win the lottery. That's not in your power to do. If you win, that's great. That gets rid of a lot of stress. But there could be some interpersonal stresses, especially if you win the lottery. Anyway, so we need to manage stress. Hydration. Now, the good news about being properly hydrated is if you're eating the diet you're supposed to be eating and you're not consuming any diuretics. Diuretics are things that make the body, it pulls water out of the tissues to dilute something that you just consumed, like beer. If you drink, 30 ounces of beer, you'll urinate away 60 ounces of liquid. Now, how's that possible? Your body pulled out 20 ounces of liquid from your tissues to dilute the poisons in the beer, the alcohol, which is a poison to the body. So diuretics are anything that causes the body to dehydrate itself, to protect itself. It knows dehydration is not good, but it's the lesser of two evils. It has to dilute those poisons that came into the body. So as long as you're not consuming anything that requires the body pulling water out of its tissues, and you're eating medium content to high water content fruit, you can't just be eating bananas every day, all your meals. Bananas are not high enough water content. You need some higher water content. It could be apples, it could be, watermelon. That's pretty good. Water is in its name. So melons are great for hydrating the body. So yeah, hydration is good. But if you live someplace where the air gets very, very dry, especially in the winter, when it's cold out, cold air can hold less moisture than warm air. So if you're living where it gets very cold in the winter and the air is very dry and you're sleeping for 8 hours, it doesn't matter if you're breathing through your nose or your mouth. With every breath you take in and out, you're dehydrating the body. And that's why if you're living in that climate, water should be the first meal of the day to rehydrate yourself. Even if you're eating a lot of fruits and vegetables, because we're designed to live where it's humid out all year round. So we'll never get dehydrated by dry air. But if you live where there can be some dry air, make sure water, if you wake up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, have a glass of water just sitting there. So as you walk past it, take some, put it back, make sure you don't miss the counter because you're pretty sleepy at this point. So yeah, hydration, very important. These are basically the basics of health. But as I said before, when we talk about diet, it should be healthy foods and adequate nutrition. So that's what diet really consists of: healthy foods and adequate nutrition.
So you already mentioned phones. So let's stay here for a while. We have smartphones, smartwatches, smart this, smart that. But is it really smart for us and our health to be using them so religiously?
Well, technology can be very helpful today. It's a double-edged sword. There's technology that can be very helpful and technology that can be very harmful. The harmful ones are obvious: holding a cell phone to your head, smoking a cigarette, drinking alcoholic liquids. But technology can also be helpful. A cell phone can also be helpful. You broke down on the side of the road, you have a phone with you. I mean, we didn't have this 20, 30 years ago. So you just have to learn how to use these things so that the harmful aspect of it doesn't harm you. So don't hold a cell phone to your head. Either use the speakerphone where the phone can be at least this far away from you, or get the earbuds or something, the wireless earbuds. I know they're wireless, but they're not as harmful to your head as an actual cell phone is. We manufacture a lot of things that can be harmful, so we just have to keep that in mind. But what about the phototherapy device? There's a perfect example of a really great piece of technology, because it helps people who live in where you're living in Slovenia, where in the winter the sun is not strong enough. So there's a great piece of technology. Now, if you use it for more than you're supposed to use it every day, if you use it for more than 10 minutes a day, yeah, it can hurt your skin. So you just use it the way you should be using it, just like a cell phone. So without technology, we couldn't have worthwhile nutritional supplements. Let's look at that. Technology allows us to have the green powder supplement, which allows us to have good, nutritious diet. So it's a double-edged sword. I'm not saying don't use cell phones, just use them safely. I'm not saying, or how about this? What about Wi-Fi? Okay, it's better if you don't use Wi-Fi in your home. It's better if you use wired connections. But let's say you do use Wi-Fi because your kids use Wi-Fi and you need Wi-Fi in the home. But at night, when everyone's sleeping, it doesn't need to be on. Please turn it off when you go to sleep. Put it on a timer. You can go to Home Depot or some store like that and buy a digital appliance timer meant to usually turn on and off a lamp. But you can use it to turn on and off the Wi-Fi router. So it goes off at midnight and comes back on at 7 a.m. or something like that. It does not need to be on while you're sleeping, and you don't need to be bathing yourself in those Wi-Fi waves. So it's good technology. It allows you access to the internet, which is great. Of course, the internet is another double-edged sword. It's got a lot of truth out there, but it's got a lot of nonsense out there too. What's an example of nonsense? You need to eat meat. Yeah, so that's on the internet. But so technology, yeah, it can be a double-edged sword.
Okay, so back to nutrition, because now probably the viewers are listening to this and are like, what can we do? We're going on the wrong path. So you live in a warm, sunny Florida, where you have a year-long supply of fresh, ripe fruits and all the sun you need. But let's put you in a Slovene shoes for a second. What are your recommendations for us? What can we do or should we do to make our health a little bit better, at least?
Well, it's basically do the best you can is my philosophy. And some people are not doing the best they can because they just don't know what to do. Okay, so step one is education and learn what to try to do. And then do the best you can. There's workarounds like the phototherapy device for getting enough, of the nutrients that the sun makes in the skin, getting a green powder supplement, which I'm pretty sure you can get there, a good one to add to the diet. Most people can get bananas. So you just make sure the bananas are ripe and you make sure you're ripening them properly in your home. Put some up high where it's warm, put some lower down to slow them down. And then just eat as much fruit as you can, as much variety as you can get. And I've not found many people who don't have access to these. Now, the green powder costs money. Fruit costs money. There are some people that, well, I can't afford fruit. I can't afford the green powder. Now what do I do? I don't really have any recommendations at that point because all my recommendations are, eat the foods you're designed to eat, get the nutrition you're designed to have in order to get optimal health. If you can't eat any fruits, you're going to be eating a suboptimal diet. Now, there's different, you can go down a range of suboptimal diets. There's the worst diet you can eat, which is meat and dairy and grain. Then there's the diet that's going to have beans, but you're going to have to cook the beans. So you don't need, you can still eat a plant-based diet. There are vegans eating vegan diets, but there's going to be a lot of cooked food in the vegan diet because they can't eat those foods raw. They got to be cooked. So, okay, now you're eating those foods, certainly add the green powder to your diet to make up for the losses of the cooking process. That's for sure. And then, check DB12 and iodine to make sure you're getting enough, get the phototherapy device. So there's always workarounds. And, you may not be able to eat the best diet as far as the foods are concerned, but you can eat the second best diet. But you got to know what the second best diet is. Some people think, well, it's either the raw vegan fruitarian-based diet or it's what I used to eat. No, there's plenty in between. So you just have to figure out what's the second best diet. And most people, if they can't eat the first best diet, they can certainly eat the second best diet.
So education is the first step.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so my last question. Oh, this is going to be interesting. In the light of the past 3 years, would you agree with Louis Pasteur's famous quote, "The germ is nothing, the terrain is everything"?
Okay, here we go. We just talked about how education is important. And here, I'm ready to dish out some education here. Human beings are a very binary species. So it's either this or that. It's one end, one end of this or the other end of this. But usually in between those two ends is a spectrum. So some people say it's the germ theory is true, and some people say, no, you're wrong. It's terrain theory. That's what's true. But at each, and by the way, at each end of the spectrum, people are saying, no, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. But what I found that in general, the truth is often in the middle somewhere. And this goes for just about anything. but it certainly does for this. So my research has shown that there are pathogens, things that can be contagious, things that are capable of harming the body to a degree. But now, what degree? How much these can affect us depends on our terrain. Okay, so yes, you want a great terrain. You want healthy body. You want good digestive flora inside there. You know, the good bacteria. So that plenty of nervous system energy. So you're getting enough phase 4 deep sleep, properly hydrated. You're getting up and down motion, exercise to move your lymphatic fluid around. That's all terrain. So that if you do get exposed to something that is a contagion, is a pathogen, your body can just bang it out. You may not even know you had anything. Maybe you lost your appetite for a day or 2 days, and that was the extent of your symptoms. Yet, your friend who was exposed to the same pathogen, they feel like they're ready to die. They're home in bed, you know, they've got all the symptoms going on, fever, and they feel horrible. Just kill me now. But it's the same exposure. It was to the same pathogen, the same amount, because amount is also a factor, but they were just in poor health. They eat the typical Western diet. They don't get enough sleep. They don't get enough exercise at all. So they're going to be affected more because their body is just not able to deal with it in a just a healthy fashion, a robust fashion. So both are important. Terrain and don't just assume there's no such thing as pathogens. There's no such thing as contagions. And I've tried to have this discussion with people and at both ends of the spectrum, and they're just not capable of listening. They just stick to where they are. So that's the long and the short of the germ theory versus terrain theory.
Great, thanks for your how you see things.
Now I do have some recommendations.
Okay.
Here's some recommendations in general. Don't follow one educator. Whoops. Let me just there I am. Okay. I like to be on the screen so you don't forget who's talking to you. Don't follow one educator. That's very important because a lot of educators out there, they can have a lot of correct information, but they can have also some incorrect information. And most new people to this don't know how to tell the difference, so they just assume everything they're saying is correct. It's not so. But so if you follow multiple educators, you'll start to hear the conflicting information, and that's a good thing. Find the conflicting information. You want to be happy when you find it. That may sound counterintuitive, and people may say, "No, I don't want to hear any conflicting information," but you do because it's out. It's real. It's out there. So you want to know, so you can then research all the conflicting information to see which is the proper one to follow. This is why multi-source education is best. Multi-source education, and be a researcher and not a student. Students tend not to question what they're taught. They accept what they're taught. They may ask a question of clarification, but they basically accept what the teacher is teaching. Researchers don't accept anything as true. They research it. It's nothing personal. It's just what they do. So learn as a researcher and not as a student. So, and invest for your future health. Be thinking about your future health. Like I said before, a lot of people think about their future finances, but not about their future health. You're going to have a level of health every day you're alive. What do you want that level of health to be when you're 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, whatever you live to? What do you want your level of health to be during the last year of your life? Let's put it that way. I want to have the best health possible, of course. And here's one that I love putting in there, adding in there, a reminder. Everyone's entitled to their own opinions, but everyone is not entitled to their own facts.
Oh, that was a great way to wrap up our conversation. And just for the end, if people are curious and they want to find more information and talk to you, maybe where can they find you and how do you actually help people?
Well, they can go to health101.org, and here's a good place to start with the reading. This is a page that has about a dozen articles on it, and these have been voted the best ones. So you go to my website, and there's some very, very good reading there. These are the 3 books that I've written, and if anybody wants free copies of the ebooks, they just have to go to this page on my website, lovefruit.com/lovefruit. But there's a catch. You have to mention that you heard about this offer on Tea's podcast. You've got to mention this podcast. And then you can, there's a way it'll explain to you how to get your free copies of the ebook versions of this book. I also do counseling. The most popular counseling is the most beneficial one, which is the problematic nutrients testing counseling, which I test D, B12, and iodine. That's why you hear me talking about the big 3 all the time: vitamin D, B12, and iodine, the nutrient. So we test them, and you can do this anywhere in the world, basically, and we do it through email. It's important to know that at the very least, those 3 are where they need to be. I also have a Facebook group that you can participate in from anywhere in the world. It's the Healthiest Raw Vegan Diet. We have about 4,500 members now, and I'll send you the link. It's one of these long Facebook links. I'll send you the link so you can put it in the description so people can just click on it, and if they want to, they can join it and join in the conversation where you can ask me questions. Just make sure to tag me in the question so that I'll be sure to be notified of it. I also happen to be one of the world's leading experts on electric vehicles, and I tend to talk about that now too, because that also impacts the health of the entire planet. It impacts the health of everybody, your children, everybody. So anybody who has any questions about electric vehicles, I've got some great resources, because there's a lot, just like there's a lot of misinformation out there about the vegan diet and about the meat and dairy-based diet, people saying, oh, you need to eat it. There's a lot of misinformation out there about electric vehicles, because there's a very powerful industry that doesn't want anyone buying them. See if you can guess who that industry is. So I'll leave you with this, my favorite quote: what can do you great harm is what you know that just ain't so.
Thank you, Don, very much for all the knowledge you shared with us today. And if we'll have any comments below this video, any questions, we might have to schedule another interview or talk.
Yeah, I will try. Once I get the link for the video on YouTube, I will go to it every now and then just to see if there's any questions for me, or you can, email me and say, you've got some questions building up there, go have a look. And I'll definitely go there and answer the questions in the comment section below the video.
Great. Thank you so much. You have a great day. Here it's already dark, but you're starting with the day. So have a nice time and see you on some other occasion.
Thanks for inviting me.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Poglej, si že kle. Firbec, ne? Don je rekel, da lahko vse PDF-je njegovih knjig dobiš popolnoma brezplačno. Moje darilo zate pa je, oziroma za 2, ki jo bom izžrebala med vsemi, ki boste pod tem videom pustili kakšen komentar, sta pa ti 2 knjigi v fizični obliki. Ja? Se pravi, eno dobi en, drugo dobi drug. Tako da se veselim, da prijete v prave roke in do naslednjič. Adijo.